There's something almost hypnotic about the open road at night. The way the miles of dark pavement just disappear under your tires. The world outside your headlights swallowed up by blackness. Gas stations glow like little islands in a sea of darkness. Rest stops sit in eerie silence, their old lights buzzing, the wind whispering under the doors. For most people, the road is just a way to get from one place to another. You drive it, you pass through, you forget it. But for truckers, the road is life. Out here, hours stretch into days. Days fade into nights. And somewhere between the steady hum of the tires and the endless rhythm of the mile markers, you start to notice things, strange things. Things you can't always explain. Sometimes there's a perfectly good reason for what you see. Other times, it stays with you. I've heard stories from drivers who've seen everything. Strange lights that seem to follow them. People standing where no one should be. Voices on the radio that don't belong to anyone. And they all say the same thing. The road has its own stories. And some of them are dark. Tonight, you'll hear 3 of those stories. A foggy roadside pickup that turned into something impossible. A quiet rest stop that became a dangerous game of cat and mouse. And a sealed cargo run, with something inside that should never have been moved. These aren't about bad weather or flat tires. These are the kind of nights you can't prepare for. The ones that make you check your mirrors more often. The ones that make you think twice before pulling over in the dark. Sound. Soft brake hiss. Gear shift click. The low hum of the engine grows slightly louder. Because out there, under the empty stretch of night sky, far from city lights, far from anything familiar, you start to realize something. You're not always alone. And sometimes, you're not the one doing the watching. Mike had been driving rigs for over 20 years. He'd seen some weird things in that time. Wrecks that made no sense, lights out in the distance that vanished when you got closer, and people walking where no person should be walking. But nothing like what happened that night. It was early spring, somewhere deep in rural Pennsylvania. His GPS had rerouted him off the interstate because of construction, putting him on a 2-lane country road that twisted through dark woods and rolling hills. That's when the fog rolled in. One moment, the air was clear. The next, it was like someone dropped a white curtain across the road. His high beams didn't help. They just lit up the haze, blinding him even more. He slowed to 30, leaning forward over the wheel, eyes locked on the faint, broken stripe down the middle. Sound. Wipers swishing slowly, engine humming low. And that's when he saw her. She was just there, standing on the shoulder, barely visible until she was almost right in front of him. A woman, white dress down to her ankles, dark hair loose over her shoulders. She was waving one arm slowly, like she was trying to get his attention or warn him. Mike's first thought was accident. Maybe she'd hit a deer or broken down. Nobody dresses like that and walks the side of a country road in the middle of the night without a reason. He eased the truck onto the shoulder, hazard lights clicking, and rolled the passenger window down. "You all right, ma'am?" he called over the engine. She nodded once, slow, almost stiff. "My car broke down," she said, her voice barely carrying over the rain. "Just up ahead. Could you give me a ride?" Mike hesitated. He had a rule, never pick up strangers. But she was shivering, and there was something about the way she just stood there in the fog that made him reach over and unlock the door. She climbed in without another word. The cab was warm, but when her hand brushed his arm, her skin felt like ice. She folded her hands neatly in her lap, staring straight ahead. "Where's your car?" Mike asked, easing the truck back onto the road. She made a vague gesture forward. "A few miles. I'll tell you when." They drove in silence. The fog pressed in so thick he could barely see the trees anymore. The CB radio crackled once, just static, and then went quiet. After 5 minutes, she spoke again. "Turn here." Mike glanced over. His chest tightened. The road she meant wasn't really a road. Just a narrow strip of gravel disappearing into the fog. No signs. No lights. Just darkness. "You sure?" he asked. "Yes." Against his better judgment, he turned. The crunch of gravel under the tires was loud in the stillness. The truck swayed on the uneven ground. Then silence. He looked to the passenger seat. Empty. The door was closed. Seatbelt still buckled. No sign she'd ever been there at all. A cold shiver crawled up his spine. He slammed it into reverse, backing out onto the main road as fast as he dared, heart thudding in his ears. He didn't stop until he reached the next town. He pulled into a diner, still rattled, and told the woman behind the counter what happened, hoping she might know who the mysterious passenger was. Her face drained of color. "You shouldn't have stopped," she said softly. "There's no car out there. Hasn't been for 30 years. A woman was hit and killed on that road in '92. Truck driver swerved to miss her in the fog. Went into the ravine." Mike didn't finish his coffee. 2 weeks later, hauling another load through the area, he saw it. A small white bouquet tied to a post at the edge of the fog, right where she had been standing. Daniel had been on the road for less than a year. Still green, still learning the unspoken rules of long-haul life. That night, he learned one of the big ones. The trip was nothing special, 3 states, decent weather, steady miles. He'd started before dawn, telling himself he'd push through until he couldn't keep his eyes open. By 2 a.m., the road ahead was swimming in his headlights. His eyes burned, his shoulders ached, and his grip on the wheel had gone stiff. That's when he spotted the glowing blue rest area sign. No hesitation, he took the exit. The lot was mostly empty, just a couple of trucks idling way in the back. The overhead sodium lights bathed everything in a dull orange haze, buzzing like a tired wasp. Sound, footsteps on gravel, faint wind. Inside, the rest stop was warm, but too quiet. No voices, no background chatter. Just the faint hiss of a soda machine and the smell of burnt coffee from a pot that had been sitting way too long. Behind the counter was an older guy, maybe in his 60s, lines carved deep into his face. Daniel grabbed a coffee and some chips, figuring he'd crash in the cab for a few hours. As the cashier rang him up, he looked Daniel over, slow, deliberate, like he was studying him. "You be careful out there tonight," the man said finally. His voice was low, almost like he didn't want anyone else to hear. Daniel gave a polite chuckle. "Yeah, always am." No smile, no nod. The man just slid the coffee toward him and stared out the window again. When Daniel stepped outside, everything looked the same, except for one detail. Earlier, there had been a beat-up sedan parked way across the lot. Now it was only 3 spaces away from his truck. No lights, no movement, just sitting there. He felt a flicker of unease, but he told himself not to be paranoid. He climbed into the cab, locked the doors, killed the engine, and crawled into the sleeper berth. It was quiet for a while, long enough for his body to relax. His eyes were just starting to close when he heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, sound. Gravel crunching, circling slowly. They moved around the truck, crunching over the gravel in a slow loop. Daniel froze. He didn't even breathe. The sound stopped right by the passenger door. Careful not to make noise, he reached for the curtain and eased it back. Under the orange wash of the lamp, a man stood there. Hoodie pulled low, hands buried in the pockets. Daniel couldn't see his face, but the way he stood, still head tilted toward the cab, made his skin crawl. The man didn't knock, didn't try the door, just stood there for a few long seconds before turning away and walking toward the sedan. Daniel's shoulders loosened a little, until the car's headlights snapped on. Sound? Engine starting, low rumble. He pulled out of the lot, trying to play it cool. Merged back onto the highway. A few miles later, he checked the mirror. The sedan was there. It didn't ride his bumper. It didn't pass. Just stayed far enough back that he couldn't see the driver's face. Daniel's gut was in knots. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm, clipped. "Stay on the main road. There's a way station about 10 miles ahead. Don't pull over until you're there." The sedan stayed right with him. Sound. Engine accelerating, wind noise building. The bright lights of the way station finally appeared ahead. Daniel hit his hazards, swung into the lot. The sedan slowed, then veered away at the last second, disappearing down the exit ramp. Later, he heard the story on the news. A man in a gray sedan had been arrested for abducting drivers at rural rest stops. 3 victims were still missing. Daniel never used an empty rest area again. Ralph had hauled just about everything in his 25 years behind the wheel. Produce, furniture, heavy machinery, even livestock that never stopped making noise. But this run felt different before it even started. The dispatcher's instructions were unusually vague. A sealed shipping container. Pick it up at a small rail yard just after sunset. Drop it off before dawn 2 states over. No stops unless absolutely necessary. When Ralph asked what was inside, the man barely looked up from his clipboard. Sensitive materials, he said. Nothing more. Sound. Trailer door locking, heavy latch clanging shut. The container was old, paint flaking, steel doors locked with a heavy industrial seal. No markings. No numbers. No this way up or hazard warnings. Just nothing. Ralph ran a hand over the cold metal out of habit, looking for dents, leaks, anything unusual. It was solid. Too solid. The first couple of hours passed without incident. The night was clear, the highway mostly empty. Just the hum of the tires and the glow of the dash lights. Then, somewhere past midnight, it started. A dull thud from the trailer. Just once. Ralph didn't even slow down, cargo shifted sometimes, no big deal. Then came a second thud. Louder. Followed by scratching. At first, slow and irregular. Then faster. More frantic. Like claws dragging down metal. Ralph's grip tightened on the wheel. His dispatcher's voice echoed in his head. Don't stop unless absolutely necessary. Sound. Metallic bang from trailer. The next hit was hard enough that he felt it through the cab. Against his better judgment, Ralph pulled into a deserted turnout. He stepped out with his flashlight, the night air cold against his face. The silence out here was heavy. The only sound was the faint ticking of the cooling engine. Then a low, wet breath from inside the container. Ralph's skin prickled. He swept the flashlight beam along the trailer wall. Fresh gouges scored the metal. Deep, uneven. From the inside, something moved in there. He didn't wait to see what. He climbed back into the cab, slammed the locks, and pressed the accelerator harder than he should have. The scratching came and went in bursts, fading as the sky began to pale. By the time the first hint of dawn lit the horizon, Ralph reached the drop-off. A fenced warehouse with 2 men in dark suits waiting out front. They didn't waste time. Signed the paperwork, took the keys, rolled the container inside without a word. As Ralph turned to leave, one of them stopped him. You were told not to stop, right? Ralph nodded. The man smiled thin, cold. Good. Forget about this trip. Ralph didn't argue. But in the rear view, he caught a glimpse of the trailer's open doors before they swung shut. Claw marks ran all the way down the inside. The road is full of stories. Some are swapped over burnt coffee in a lonely diner at 3 a.m. Some crackle over CB radios between drivers who've seen things they can't forget. And then there are the ones that never get told out loud, the kind you keep to yourself because you're not sure anyone would believe you. Mike's night in the fog. A woman in white who climbed into his cab, then vanished without a sound. Daniel's rest stop, where a stranger in a sedan turned an empty parking lot into a hunting ground. Ralph's sealed cargo, and the thing inside it that wanted out badly enough to claw through steel. These aren't just bad nights or weird coincidences. They're reminders that the road is bigger, lonelier, and much darker than most people realize. Because once you leave the safety of the city lights, you're in a different world. A world where the next gas station could be 50 miles away, where a figure in the fog might not be alive, where the headlights behind you could be following for reasons you'll never want to find out. Truckers know this better than anyone. They're out there every night, crossing stretches of highway that feel like they belong to another time, or maybe another place entirely. And every so often, they bring back stories like these. Sound. CB radio static, faint voice cutting in and out. So next time you're out late and a semi-thunders past you in the dark, spare a thought for the person behind that wheel. They might have seen something you'd never believe. And if you ever find yourself out there, just you, the road, and the dark pressing in, If the fog starts to close around you, if headlights appear in your mirror and never go away, just keep driving.